The War Within is almost out, and the good news is it's got no Legion, BFA, or Shadowlands style borrowed power, and you'll regularly find yourself getting Warbound gear that you can transfer to your alts. That, plus reputations being account-wide, means that your decision of a main is less about character progress, and it's more just about your progress, picking something that you enjoy that fits your gameplay, fits your goals, and gives you room to grow. To grow right in today's sponsor. You know, I just feel better knowing that I'm safe and I'm getting a good deal, and that's why my sponsor, nordvpn.com/Battle Warcraft, is helpful. Save money, more secure, and it gives me tools to get around common problems that I find, and with my link and code, which is Battle Warcraft, you'll get 4 months for free on top of the 2-year plan. Now, just as an example, the last few weeks has seen me book 7 flights and 5 hotels, which is a story for another time, but when doing that, I was using Nord, because the airline, hotel, and car rental prices are often dynamic based on your location. And it's kind of wild, most people just don't know to look. You see, with Nord, you select a country and then your traffic is routed through that country. It's all super secure, and that means that you can access deals only available in other markets. And you can get around pricing algorithms that just kind of feel unfair. And then, of course, there's all the security benefits that come with using a VPN, and a lot of other handy things as well. Like, say, when a network bans you from certain types of content, well, if you just are tunneling it through Nord, they'll never know. So that's just a few of the ways that they help me out regularly, and they offer so many tools. They got their VPN, their password manager, and other things as well. Their apps are super convenient to use across all the different platforms that you've got, and you can get started today at nordvpn.com/Battle Warcraft. That's where you'll get 4 months for free on top of a 2-year plan, and that's all backed by the 30-day money-back guarantee. So, cheers Nord, and let's go. The first thing we gotta do is knock down some traps and pitfalls. So, what happens in a game like WoW is the best players flock to the specs with the most mathematical potential, often, of course, using perfect stats and ideal trinkets. And what this does is it inflates the gap, right? The gap between the best performance and the median, because those who want the most performance will flock to whatever spec has got the most potential, regardless of how easy it is for the average person to reach that potential. And this means that people often look at damage rankings and kind of get the wrong idea regarding a flavor of the month class that they can roll to instantly get top results, because the reality is just not like that. So here's a Mirdrasil Mythic. You can see the max, min, median, as well as upper and lower quartiles of people's damage. Take a look at Fire Mage, right? It's bang in the middle. Now let's say you main Fire Mage and you get skilled enough to produce upper quartile parses for Fire Mage. That's, by the way, the rightmost thick bit of the bar. If you did that, you would be outperforming a median Outlaw Rogue, with Outlaw Rogue actually having the highest rank there. So, if you were to Flavor of the Month roll to Outlaw, chances are you'd probably do worse than you did in Fire, because Fire's something you'd actually be skilled at. So here's the simple question to always ask yourself. If I play my main excellently, will I get better results than if I swap to a Flavor of the Month class and just get average results? In most cases, you're better compounding in your own skill by continually getting better at your main, which is a spec that you'll probably enjoy more anyway, because you'd be picking it for the right reasons. And by the way, this is all me using mythic numbers. You see, if you bring that down to heroic, you often see totally different rankings. Take a look at a Mirdrasil Season 3 heroic, right? That's the same time frame I just used for mythic. Now let's say you're a Retribution Paladin and you see the median damage ranking of 20th in mythic. That could be a bit depressing. But if you did get a top quintile parse, guess what? You'd still be beating most averages. But if you knock the difficulty down to heroic, actually, Ret is rank 12. And that's because heroic parses will be more representative of the average World of Warcraft player and how they're actually performing. So the core lesson for you here is to pick something that you can stick with so you can get the most out of it. Do that instead of swapping to Flavor of the Month all the time, and you'll find yourself becoming a more skilled player as each patch progresses. You'll be just compounding on your own skill and experience, and then you'll be able to use flourishes, right? Use the utility in your specs kit to actually be an amazing teammate in something like a dungeon. But there is always the question, what if my spec is dead? Dead specs then. Sometimes there are near dead specs in World of Warcraft, and the problem is we cannot call what they'll be in advance. Blizzard will be buffing and nerfing things like mad when the raid rolls out, plus outside of Mythic, where the differences are often quite exaggerated because those players are just so good, it's actually very rare to have, say, a pure DPS have no good option. And the same goes for classes that have got 2 DPS specs. And that means the majority of you will be fine. Almost all of us will be fine. Plus, outside of Mythic Raider, the highest keys, where obviously the differences are exaggerated, it's really quite rare to have a pure DPS class have no good option within its 3 specs, and the same goes for those with 2 DPS specs. Really, the vast majority of us are going to be fine. If you want to push high Mythic Plus or be an amazing Mythic Raider, well, that spec to spec, class to class performance will matter, but then again, you're probably not watching this, which is a generalist channel for top-end advice. With that said, I now want to talk about our class rankings. Okay, the class rankings. If you want a more complete dive into each one of these, do hit up our winners and losers of War Within video, but here is the TLDR. I'm going to split things into 3 buckets. First up, those that are excellent, where I feel you literally cannot go wrong, unless you just happen to say not enjoy the theme. So, each of Death Knight, Paladin, Mage, and Monk are goddamn excellent, and you basically can't go wrong. Each one of these has seen meaningful positive change moving into this expansion. Death Knight is giving you 2 fantastic yet different DPS specs, and Blood is a real amazing tank spec. Then Mage overall is probably the best pure DPS class in the game. Each spec is very different, they play excellently, especially the revamp done to Arcane. Then there's Paladin and Monk, which I think are the joint kings of hybrid gameplay in World of Warcraft. If you want to tank, heal, or DPS, each one of those has got a fantastic spec for you. And I'll especially call out the healing specs. Holy Paladin is vastly improved moving expansion to expansion, and Mistweaver Monk has had some really nice surgical changes. So, those are 4 classes where you straight up cannot go wrong. And that brings me to the next bucket of classes. These are ones where I'll say they're good, and I don't think you'll regret them. And this time, the middle of the pack is big, and that's actually quite good news, because Blizzard have essentially done a good enough job. We've got Demon Hunter, Evoker, and Priest, which have not really seen that many changes, but do have hero talents that range from solid to, in a few cases, excellent. Shaman, though, has seen vast improvement from its once worrying place in the beta, and the same goes for Warlock. Warriors then continue to be solid. Mountain Thane I'll definitely call out as being a bunch of fun, and as for Hunters, while they haven't been fully revamped, they are significantly better than what was there before, even though their hero specs are just a little bit middling. I'd say that none of these classes are dead in terms of design, and most people will be able to find fun in any one of them. Next then, the bottom category, the bottom bucket of classes. These are the ones that need work, and I definitely say select these with caution. Rogue has simply not seen enough class design work. It just is completely unloved. There are loads of problems that should be solved and just haven't been. Druid then has seen change, but it's often been middling to bad. Balanced Druids, sorry, you guys just need the happy pills. Guardian, well, Guardian could not be more sleepy. Feral has managed to lay off its crack pipe, and thankfully Restoration is actually quite fantastic, but it just doesn't make up for the rest not really feeling that good. Now, it wouldn't take much to fix up these problems here. Some surgical changes could go a long way for Druid, and really it's the same with Rogue. This is just a case where they both feel unloved, and it almost to me seems like Blizzard ran out of time. That does mean that if there is anything that should be queued up for patch 11.0.7 class changes, it's probably first the Rogues and then the Druids. So I'll say right now, I would not recommend these specs unless they're a fantasy and gameplay that you happen to love already. That being said, I've got to imagine these are top of the list for quick class fixes when the expansion launches. So that's a bunch of classes, but what do you actually want to play? The first thing to ask yourself is, do you want to tank or heal on your main? And if so, do you want access to other roles? If tanking is the goal, then I'd probably rank them like this, with Death Knight and Monk at the top, Paladin, Warrior, and DH being good, and of course Druid as our least appealing choice. As for healers, it's actually way harder to give advice because they're all great and they mostly have different playstyles. I mean, seriously, our winners and losers episode on healer was kind of rendered clickbait because there were no losers, which is a great sign, and that means it's about style and options. Priest is WoW's only double healer. It gives you amazing flexibility. I'd say Holy is simple and can feel powerful, while Disc does have a higher skill ceiling, but at least in my experience playing it for the last expansion, it really was a rewarding spec to play. And then there's Preservation Evoker, which is definitely a high skill ceiling pick. Some people hate it, but those who love it really do love it, and there's plenty of room to flex your skill and make plays with it. Resto Shaman is a terrific group healer. Mistweaver is vastly improved, where basically the Loss of Essence font has just freed up space for the rest of their kit to shine. Resto Druid, of course, is there if you want the hot gameplay, but it does come attached to 3 specs that I don't think are looking that good coming into this expansion. And then Paladin comes in as a real strong pick, especially if you'd rather exist in melee, and it it definitely benefits from, well, just wholly having fantastic changes moving into this expansion. Then if DPS is your thing and you really don't want to be limited by any one spec being weak, one of the safer bets you can do is choosing a pure DPS, which would be a mage, a hunter, a warlock, or a rogue. And I say pure just because all three of their specs are damage ones. That being said, rogues I would say are not a great pick because they are definitely in need of some class fixing. But of course most of WoW's classes do end up having 2 DPS specs and something else, so of course picking a Death Knight, Evoker, Shaman, Warrior, or Druid is, that's a good choice. These will give you access to multiple DPS specs, and that will insulate you from any one spec performing poorly, and it'll give you the flexibility to tank or heal, which can be an amazing choice if you just want faster grouping times. Now there are of course a few traps that you can fall into. Say you only want to play DPS, but your class pick does have a tank or a healer attached. Some people may feel a social pressure to not DPS because perhaps the group needs a healer, and so if you're doing damage but you do have access to a healing spec, you may feel like you're holding your group back. That's the sort of thing where I can't really give you advice other than to just think about the social circumstances under which you're playing the game. With that being said though, I want to talk about my choice of main, my choice of ult, and then Matt's choice. First, I want to play a hybrid, mostly to DPS and heal, and that for me has ended up meaning my shortlist is Paladin, Monk, Druid, Evoker, Shaman, or Priest. Now, I went Priest for most of Dragonflight. I love Disc, but I don't really enjoy Shadow that much in world content, and I think I'll be doing loads of solo delves, and I know I won't enjoy those in Shadow, so that's basically Priest out of the running. Druid is also out of the running. Feral's okay for me, but most of the changes seem to be unappealing. Balance seems to be in a real rough state, and I think Guardian is the most boring tank in the game. Resto is solid, but that's just not enough, so sorry Druid, you're out of the running. Now, Evoker would almost tempt me because of how cool some of its hero talents are, but I just don't really care for the Drakthir, and I do prefer melee over ranged. That leaves me with Paladin, Monk, and Shaman. Each one of those are at the very least fantastic, by the way. They've all seen positive changes. Shaman does lose out though, and that's mostly because I don't enjoy range casters as much, and yes, enhancement is great, but the other DPSs in the rest of my shortlist I think are preferable to it, at least for me. Though, of course, Resto Shaman is really tempting. It's quite fantastic. Now, Monk versus Paladin is an absurdly hard choice. Each one is a terrific version of itself, but for me, Paladin edges out. I just prefer the look and feel of Paladin. I think the transmog side of it is fun, and yeah, I know for a lot of people that's not game mechanics, that's not numbers, but it does matter to me. It's part of the gameplay experience. I also enjoy the open world and delve utility of the Paladin, and Ret just to me feels real punchy. That being said, Mistweaver is super alluring. Some of its changes have been fantastic, but I have been won over by the removal of Glimmer and the rework of things in Holy that just have Holy actually apparently being one of the best versions of itself ever. That's kind of exciting. And then there's ults, which are easily one of the expansion's best things. Now, Paladin will scratch my itch for healer and tank, so I'd probably go pure DPS with an ult. My first pick is Hunter, and that's just down to personal bias because Hunter was my longtime main, and it seriously is looking quite a bit better in this expansion, mostly because of marksmanship and survival. My next one would be Mage, and that's purely because the new Arcane is just insane. I absolutely want to be unleashing just barrages and orbs at entire dungeons worth of mobs. That looks really fun. Now, I also asked Matt on our team. Of course, he writes for loads of our videos. You'll also know him from our live stream that we do on Mondays. Now, Matt has made the shift from Druid to Death Knight, and for simple reasons. Druid stonks are big time down, Blood Death Knight is a terrifically fun spec, and Unholy changes make it enjoyable for him, and he also likes Frost. Plus, Riders of the Apocalypse is probably the coolest hero tree. I mean, you get mounted combat in the open world, and backup from the Four Horsemen. That being said, Warrior was a close second for him, but both Arms and Fury are just a tad under Unholy and Frost. And then in terms of fun, the high skill ceiling of Blood ended up carrying the day for him. So now you know me and Matt's picks, as well as how I actually think about choosing a main. If you'd like to check out a little bit more, then there's Matt's guide to picking a spec that you'll truly love over on our site, bellular.games. And if you want to keep on watching videos, here is our big chunky video going through every class in the game. It rocks. So I'll see you over there, and I hope you found today's video useful.